What Once Was Mine, Chapter 23, Rapunzel. Hook hand, Attila, what a truly pleasant surprise, Flynn exclaimed, hand going to his knife. Don't you have little girls to bully somewhere? A keg of ale that needs rescuing back to the snuggly duckling? Hi again, Rapunzel said with a grin and a little wave. She pointed at Flynn. I found him. Hook hand's look, initially murderous, softened when he saw her. All three of the pub thugs, including Attila, the man in the full helm, and Ulf, silent and large, lowered their weapons. You haven't heard, then, Hook hand said slowly. The snuggly duckling was destroyed. It's all gone, burnt down. But we were just there, Rapunzel murmured. You're kidding. Flynn looked genuinely astonished. Nobody would dare. Every villain in the kingdom would hunt down whoever did it. Who was it? Countess Bathory and her manhunters, and her bloodhounds, Attila said from inside the helmet. Ulf mimed with his fingers a bunch of people breaking into a house and smashing it all to pieces. Bathory? Flynn's face went pale. Why is she in this part of the country? What's going on? Who's Countess Bathory? Rapunzel asked. The thugs and Flynn didn't answer. Judging by the looks on their faces, it was less that they were ignoring her than that they really didn't want to answer. She's looking for a girl named Rapunzel, Hookhand said softly. Rapunzel swallowed. She had never introduced herself at the pub. But if this man already knew who she was... The only possible explanation was that her mother had discovered her absence and was having people look for her. But why not hire thugs who would take an easy job like that in a heartbeat, like these guys from the Duckling? Why a countess? That was really strange. How did her mother know a countess, and how did she get in contact with her so quickly? Young Rapunzel used to spend whole afternoons imagining what her mother did and saw when she left the tower. But after many years of questioning and only getting the same boring answers, she believed them. Gothel tended the family home, gardened, and went to the market. Did Gothel ever meet a countess at a farm stand? Haggling over turnips, maybe? Poor Rapunzel had made a decision to change her life, to go outside. And not 3 days later, the outside was chasing her, wanting her back. I'm sorry, who is Countess Bathory? She repeated. All the men looked even more uncomfortable than before. She's a very bad lady, Flynn said carefully. He looked Hookhand dead in the eye as he spoke, seemingly willing him to go along with whatever story he was about to tell. She likes to take girls. She kidnaps them, that's all. And dismembers them and bathes in their blood, Hookman said, also carefully, probably thinking he was saying it gently. Flynn hit his forehead with the palm of his hand. Even Attila shook his metal-sheathed head sadly. Rapunzel tried to process this terrible information. She had never heard of, much less imagined in her worst stories, such a terrible thing. Why would her mother send an evil creature like that after her? You must leave here at once, Attila said from inside the helm. She has her bloodhounds out looking for you. They say one sniffs a person's shirt, and they can track her across the country. Cool, Flynn said, nodding. Yep, the worst stuff of my nightmares are all present and accounted for, including your own ugly mugs, of course. Speaking of, why exactly are you helping us? We're not helping you, Hookman said with disgust. We're helping the little lady here. No one deserves to be turned over to that monster, especially someone who came to the Snuggly Duckling just looking for help. I'm sorry for ignoring you, he added contrively. And Bathory destroyed the best pub in all the land, Attila growled. Ulf replayed his pantomime of the place being destroyed. Just then Gina burst into the little scene, her own knife out. What's going on here? Not what you think, Flynn said, putting his hands out to stop her. Weirdly, we gotta go. These lovely refugees from social norms say that Bathory and her dogs are after our princess here. Not a princess, Rapunzel interrupted. Bathory? Gina asked, jaw-dropping. Her hounds? We gotta get to the river, confuse the scent trail. There's a small one east of us. Weasel Creek. Flynn nodded. Let's go. Good luck, Hookhand said. Thank you, kind sir. Rapunzel stood on her toes and kissed him on the cheek before running off after her friends. She couldn't, of course, see Hookhand's face, since they were running the opposite direction. But one could probably imagine the look of surprise and soft wonder that grew there, and the dawning of ideas and words that had never seemed possible before. Weasel Creek had the honor of being the first body of water Rapunzel ever encountered. She was dazzled by the play of sunlight in the rocks, and the water splashing and dividing them. Ripples and eddies and quick-lived bubbles in 1,000 shades of white, silver, and black. Monochrome, and at the same time one of the most colorful things she'd ever seen. "Come on, into the current," Flynn said, already ankle-deep in the middle of it. Gina rubbed her arms and boots with great handfuls she scooped up. Rapunzel leapt in the stream eagerly and landed with a splash in between them. The water was cold. Some of the rocks were slippery. She wiggled her toes, wondering if her feet had ever felt this alive. She giggled as tiny fish swam in a flock over her feet, and shrieked happily when she tried to nibble her. Gina and Flynn glared at her, dripping from where her water had hit them, face, nose, chin. "This is great," Rapunzel said, picking up her feet and putting them down again, letting her skin grow icy cold. "But why exactly are we doing this?" "Throwing the bloodhounds off the scent," Gina explained. "The river doesn't carry smells, and we'll wash them off our feet." "We'll go downstream through the water," Flynn added, "and exit it somewhere else. It will take them a while to go up and down the banks with the dogs and catch the trail again." "Maybe upstream," Gina said thoughtfully. "They'll assume we'll go downstream because that would be easier, but, whatever you think." "Makes sense," Rapunzel said. "And why should anything be easier?" Flynn said, sighing. "Take me to the lanterns, that's all I want." He battered his eyes and imitated Rapunzel poorly. "And boom, suddenly the most bloodthirsty noble of all of Europe is after you. I feel like I should get a bonus for this. Hazard pay." "Works for me," Gina said. After a while, slogging through the cold stream wasn't quite as delightful as it had started out to be. Rapunzel's long skirts soaked up the water whatever she accidentally let them touch. Soon heavy and wet fabric was slapping against her legs and chafing the skin of her inner thighs. But still, the pretty flowers grew on the banks in colors her books did not adequately recreate. Pink, gold, eggy, yellow, bright white with the shadow of its own curled petal twinning next to it. And funny little bugs that walked on the water where it slowed near the banks, delicately gliding across the surface like magic. Pascal might have taken the opportunity to grab one as she leaned over to look more closely. She felt a little bad about that, but her friend had to eat. When she stood up again, Flynn was standing there staring at her, or rather, the lizard. Oh, she had forgotten to introduce them. "His name's Pascal," Rapunzel said, feeling strangely embarrassed. People had friends who were animals. Pets. Wasn't that a normal thing? "Of course it is," Flynn said, and kept walking. "You know, if it turns out that he's your familiar and you're an ugly old witch in disguise, who could have magically transported herself to the lanterns on her broom, I'm going to be very disappointed in you." "Hey, don't be mean," Gina said, hitting him on the shoulder. Rapunzel grinned smugly, defended by her other friend. "Witches are not ugly and not always old. Be respectful," Gina continued. Not what Rapunzel thought she was going to say. "And how would you know?" "Actually, now it all makes sense," Flynn said thoughtfully, looking Gina over. "You escaped from a coven, yearning for an exciting life of banditti on the road, sick of the same old newt's eyes for breakfast." There was no hesitation at all in Gina's eyes to expertly hit him in the forehead with a ball of mud. Eventually, the two adventurers decided it was safe enough to leave the Weasel Creek's cleansing waters. They wrung out their sopping garments in a sunny clearing where the trees were thin enough that they could see through the forest and over the fields and away to the sea. "Well, there's our destination, Lady Silverlocks," Flynn said with a bow. Rapunzel pushed her way forward and gasped. There was the capital city. She could see wide stone bridges connected the castle and its Inverness to the mainland, and the sparkling ocean that lapped at its shores. Gleaming towers rose into the sky, topped with blue onion domes. Markets, keeps, pubs, and plazas cozied up to the palace like it was their mother. All the buildings had brightly tiled roofs. All the streets had pretty cobbled squares. The ringing bell of a warning buoy just made itself heard over the distance, sounding more festive than forlorn. Rapunzel was overcome with awe, and the sudden urge to hide. Cities. They were so big and impressive. "So, that's pretty great, right?" Flynn said, seeing the look on her face. But we could see the lanterns perfectly from right here. People pay good money for seats like these, let me tell you. Above the crowds, away from the noise and garbage. Gina hit him. Do you see the guards down there? He demanded. Do you see them? They're probably looking for me right now. He wasn't wrong. A captain and two men, all mounted, were obviously searching the open countryside that lay between the woods and the coast. As Rapunzel watched, they approached a pair of woodsmen coming back to town, stacks of small logs strapped to their backs. The captain spoke to one of the guards, sternly it looked like, and he peeled off and began to trot back to the castle. The captain and the other one rode on, toward the forest. See? Flynn demanded. Are you seeing what I'm seeing? Horses, Rapunzel breathed. They were incredible, so much grander than the ones back at the Snuggly Duckling. Noble, huge, panting like gods, shining white and rich, chestnut brown. All delicate legs, but powerfully muscled, large eyes and manes and tails that almost put her own hair to shame. She sees horses, Flynn said, disbelieving. I see them too, Gina said with a shrug, along with the guards. Raps? Thoughts? About our journey, I mean? Yes, Rapunzel said, pulling herself together and facing Flynn. The deal was you got your crown when I get to see the lanterns. Up close. Do you really want to see this face behind bars? Flynn asked and gave her another smoldering smile, waggling his eyebrows. No, I want to see the lanterns, and no one can imprison you if you don't have the crown. Rapunzel spun on her heel and began to walk jauntily down the path. Well, you guys coming? Jean, I thought she was such a sweet and innocent thing, Flynn muttered. Shh, Gina said. I don't care if she hears me. This is what the ruling classes always do. They always get their way, tramping us little folk with their fancy silver hair and their crowns that I rightfully stole from them. No, I mean it. Shh, Gina said, holding her hand up. Flynn cut his speech off immediately. The clatter of men was coming toward them. Boots on the path, swaggers made sound. Hide, Flynn ordered Rapunzel. We'll distract them. It was so strange how he went from funny, chattering Flynn to serious and directed Flynn so quickly, like there had been an actual thinking, planning person under all his faces and jokes all along. Intriguing. Sadly, Rapunzel knew that if there was a fight, she would be useless. Her entangling with Flynn in front of the Stabbingtons was more than enough proof of that, and the fewer people who were anywhere near her hair, the better. Despite her reluctance to abandon her new friends, Rapunzel ducked behind the thick trunk of an old tree, but poked her head out to watch. 4 armed men sauntered up the path to Flynn and Gina. They weren't more escapees from the Snuggly Duckling, though, nor did they look like the soldiers on horseback in their neat uniforms with shiny buttons. They were like a cheaper, more evil version of them. Dirtier gear, caps rather than helms. The skulls of a snarling boar decorated their jackets. Good afternoon, gentlemen. My, what a lovely day for a stroll, isn't it? Flynn said with a winning smile. Is that the girl we're after? The leader spat, not bothering to respond. He seemed particularly evil, with yellowed eyes and lank locks of hair hanging off his brow. She doesn't look like the description we were told. Are you Rapunzel? Did you cut off your hair? I'm not, Gina began. Flynn slapped a hand over her mouth. Why? He asked. Why do you want her? Is there a general call for ladies of unusual hair? For modeling, perhaps? The man ignored him and jerked his head. 2 of the others quickly pushed behind Flynn and Gina, cutting off their escape. The friends reacted instantly, turning back to back, drawing their blades. This is hardly unnecessary. Any information you'd be willing to share might de-escalate the situation a bit, Flynn suggested. Perhaps we can help each other out. All you need to know is that Baron Simehead wants this Rapunzel and is giving a nice reward to them what finds her. Fair enough, but why does Bathory want her too? What's the deal? Can we get in on this? Flynn sounded both suspicious and trustworthy. A villain another villain could trust. Rapunzel was deeply impressed. But the man looked at him sharply. Bathory? She know about you? Where are you? Grab her, boys. We gotta get out of here before the wretch and her dogs find her. I'll gut the first of you who puts a hand on me, Gina said calmly. You sure this is the right girl? She don't act like no princess, one of the men muttered. Perhaps it was that word, more than anything else, that made Rapunzel stop watching and decide to do something. He was right. She wasn't a princess, and neither was Gina. She looked around and saw a small, sharp-edged rock, like the one Gina had used against the Stabbingtons. She began to reach for it. then thought, nope, that's dumb. There was no way she would take out even one of the 4 men with one rock unless her aim was perfect, and that still left 3. She thought about jumping on the back of one of the men, wrapping her arms around his neck, pulling him away, like she used to do a long time ago to her mother, begging for piggyback rides. But if she flubbed it up, there would still be 4 against 2, and they would then have her, the real Rapunzel. Also, if she panicked or the men hurt her, her hair would kill them, and anyone else it touched. She looked around desperately for some answer to present itself from the scenery around her, and one did. The horses. Wait, no. The royal guard. On their horses. "Help!" she yelled, running out from behind the train, waving her arms at them. "Oh, help! Please help!" She couldn't have asked for a more fairy tale perfect response. The captain, mounted on his beautiful horse, cocked his head, trying to pinpoint the location of the shouts. His man pointed at Rapunzel. The captain nodded and dug his heels into the horse's flanks, and together the 2 men galloped toward her. Rapunzel was hypnotized for a moment, watching the grace and the strength of the horses. Someday she would paint them. Someday she would capture the hooves, the bulging veins on the neck, the soft nostrils and eyelashes, the way that no one ever had, and the way horses were meant to be if frozen in paint. When she pulled herself away, she saw the situation from her friends had gotten worse. Flynn was on his knees, a sword to his neck. One of the men held Gina around her chest, her arms caught and immobile against her sides. She jumped and kicked and tried to get away, but accomplished little, being not quite half its size. Rapunzel ducked behind the tree again, hoping they hadn't seen her. "I was going to turn you over to the royal guards and get the reward," the greasy-haired man said, leering into Flynn's face. There was a bloody gash down the middle of his forehead. "2 birds with 1 stone, but it might be fun to try some butchery on you instead. I've got a pig come Christmas, and could use the practice." "No fair," one of the other soldiers complained. "We swore we would split his reward 4 ways. "Who's leader here?" The man whipped around into surprising speed for someone who seemed all laziness and low threats. His sword pointed was now at his comrade's neck. "Who was that girl screaming?" Another one of them asked, pointing at the tree where Rapunzel thought she was hiding. Before she could think of what to do, the cavalry literally arrived. The 2 horses leapt into the middle of the clearing, snorting and rearing and having to be pulled back by their riders, so eager they were to plunge into the battle. The captain sat high in his saddle, but honestly, he was a bit older than Rapunzel was expecting. His face was lined with years of leadership and worry, and it was hard to tell if his hair was pale with age or it was just a tow head. The man next to him was young and had a nice hair, though, so that was something. "What the devil is going on?" he demanded, looking at the scene with more disgust than curiosity. "Oh, hey there, Tregsy," Flynn called out. "Nice of you to drop in and save us. How's Trix at the castle?" "Flynn Rider?" He looked, if it were possible, even more disgusted. "I heard a cry for help, but from someone a lot prettier than you. Thank you for apprehending this criminal, gentleman. We'll take him from here. But may I ask what Lord Simhet's men are doing within the borders of our kingdom without a formal invitation?" He spoke calmly, despite the impatience of his horse, who turned left and right and stomped his feet, almost like it was sick of the talk and wanted enemies to crush. "We was chasing a lost little girl that belongs to our lord," the leader of the men said, looking the captain defiantly in his face. "Our own private issues, Captain. Then we come upon this criminal here." "Criminals," Gina corrected. "Your own private issues do not extend into these lands," Captain Tresberg said crisply. "What are you doing here is a provocation, an act of war. Leave here at once, before you cause an international incident far above your pay grade." The man's face went dark. "You can't order us around. We report to Samhet and this girl here. He'll be the mightiest king to all the world, and you and your kingdom will be begging him for mercy." "This girl?" the captain asked, confused. "This common ruffian?" Gina grinned, obviously proud to have been considered such. "But wasn't there another girl? What is this all about anyway?" Tresberg demanded. "Well, I can see you two have a lot to talk about," Flynn asked, slowly getting up to his feet. "I myself and this common ruffian here will simply be on our way, glad to have done our patriotic duty in letting you know that the incipient invasion of our beloved country. I assume all prices on my head have been made null and avoid all thanks for this. Stay where you are, Ryder." the captain bellowed, drawing his sword and pointing it at Flynn. Go on, take him, the leader of Samhet men said with a shrug. We'll take the girl and go back home. There are no negotiations here. Do not tell me what to do, and do not think you can observe with the citizen of our kingdom, criminal though she may be. We will investigate this matter ourselves. Now start marching for the border. We'll see you out. Not unless we see you first. Suddenly, at no signal Rapunzel has seen, one of the Samhet men shot the guard with a small crossbow, affixed to his arm. The missile hit the chestnut horse square in the shoulder. While it neither embedded itself nor did much damage, it accomplished what it was supposed to do, terrify and surprise the poor animal. It reared up and its rider scrambled to stay on. The captain didn't bother looking around to see what had happened. He set his jaw and drove his own horse into the brigands, bringing his sword into their leader. The scene was chaos. The wounded horse screamed and lunged at anyone who could see. The guards on its back swung his sword while being nearly thrown left and right. The captain leveled a blow at one man, then another, wheeling his own horse around. One man held Gina. The other one escaped to defend their leader. No one noticed Flynn slipped through the fight and grabbed Rapunzel from the hiding place. Come on, he cried. But Gina, she said, she can take care of herself. Run. Rapunzel let herself be pulled along, but looked behind them. Gina had indeed twirled out of her captor's grasp. She took one extra second to spit at him, and then leapt nimbly through the panicking horses and fighting men, and fled into the trees. Only the captain saw Rapunzel as she and Flynn escaped in the black forest. Their eyes met for a moment. His face fell in astonishment. She would never be certain, but she could have sworn that his mouth made the words, "It can't be." And then she was plunging into the woods with her friends, away from the fight.